there's a roadblock currently blocking President Trump's firing plans. Picture this, thousands of eager federal workers, think National Park Rangers, VA staff, even Department of Defense employees. They were all about to get the boot, fired, terminated, mass terminations, when a federal judge says, wait, hold up, that's illegal. What's at stake? Jobs, justice, and even how the federal government runs. Let's break it all down. On February 27th, a senior district judge, William Alsup, drops a bombshell ruling in San Francisco. He's looking at two OPM memos, one from January 20th and the other from February 14th. And he's trying to figure out, did OPM direct the firing of probationary employees? Probationary federal employees means that you just started working for the federal government for the first year or two in some situations. Usually it's 12 months. So looking at the first memo, it specifically says employees in probationary status could be terminated without triggering appeal rights, which is correct. And then on February 14th, the OPM memo says, we have asked that you separate probationary employees that you have not identified as mission critical no later than the end of Monday, February 17th. These two memos led to widespread terminations. A lot of agencies, like the VA, the SSA, among others, a lot of them were viewing this as a directive from OPM. There was a hearing just last week with the House Veterans Affairs Committee. The chief human capital officer at VA was asked who in her chain of command ordered the firing of probationary employees. She said there was direction from the Office of Personnel Management, OPM. Now the judge, he's not having it, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he's saying, OPM, you don't have the ability, you don't have the authority to run around and just tell agencies who they can and who they can't fire. Now in his exact words, he said, OPM does not have any authority whatsoever under any statute in the history of the universe to hire and fire employees within another agency. He's basically saying OPM overstepped. Now, it's not a clear victory right now. This judge has limited jurisdiction. Right now, he can actually enforce this within 6 federal agencies, which includes the National Park Service, Department of Veteran Affairs, Bureau of Land Management, National Science Foundation, Small Business Administration, and parts of the DoD. Why only those? It's because of his jurisdiction. It's because of the red tape that exists. Now, who are these probationary employees? These are park rangers. These are people that work at the SSA. These are people that help veterans. It's a whole host of people. And these individuals, they spent 4 to 6 months trying to get into the federal government. They went through all the loops and the hurdles in order to try to get the job. Job's a lot harder to get than something in the private sector, where in the private sector, the hiring process is dramatically quicker. Public sector, it's more cumbersome. It's more confusing. It's more ambiguous. So they did all of that. They get their job and then bam, they get a memo for no fault of their own. They're now being let go. They're now being kicked to the curb. Another huge issue is the wording on a lot of the termination letters where it states due to poor performance, or it indicates their performance was not up to standard, which is copy and paste language that was not true in the majority of cases. So this leads to the question, can a federal agency fire a probationary federal employee for reasons outside of performance and misconduct? And I believe that they can, because if you go to the MSPB website and you read the guidance that they have there, it says if the agency terminates the individual for reasons during the probationary period, the person's entitled to a written notice stating the basis and the effective date of termination. However, the board's jurisdiction over such a termination is limited to allegations that was based on partisan political reasons or marital status. And then, right at the bottom it says, the board may not decide whether the stated reasons why the agency terminated the appointment were correct. It is also believed by some that federal agencies can look within their workforce and identify individuals to cut that are probationary employees in the interest of efficiency. So they do not need a backlog or a history or supporting documentation of poor performance, not for an individual that's on probation. Because of all of this, the Department of Defense alone was set to start firing thousands of workers this past Friday. That's according to a notice from DoD. 5,000 employees. That's not a staffing tweak. That's being influenced by OPM. And the judge specifically said that he cannot force DOD to stop because of jurisdiction. But he did urge the government to spread the word. His exact words were, "I'm going to count on the government to do the right thing." The question is, will the government listen? Will agencies like DOD and SSA actually adhere to what he's saying, or will they continue to go full steam ahead? What do you think? Now, on the other side, you have the lawyers for the government. They're saying OPM never directed this. This was a suggestion. This was a nudge. We were just nudging them and letting them know what they're able to do. We never told agencies who to fire. That's not OPM. That's not what we're doing here. And in some language, it actually comes across as a suggestion. And if you look back at the deferred resignation program, they gave the agencies a lot of wiggle room. They gave them a lot of freedom on to identify jobs that were not eligible for deferred resignation. They give them a lot of freedom even when it comes to the return to work. Different agencies had different standards. But many people feel like OPM did a lot more than nudge the agencies. It was a full-blown push. In one DOD memo, it said, in accordance with direction from OPM, terminate probationary employees starting February 28th. That's certainly not a nudge. The judge's own words were, how could so much of the workforce be amputated suddenly, overnight? It's so irregular and so widespread in the history of our country. He ruled these OPM memos as ultra vires, and that's Latin for beyond the powers. It means you're flexing power that you don't really have. OPM's job is to manage federal HR policies, benefits, and that kind of stuff. They can hire and fire their own people within OPM, sure, but directing other agencies to do the same, well, that's more of a power grab. That's taking it a step too far. And it's a shame, we're 5 weeks into it, right? We're 5 weeks into this new plan, and it's taken this long for a federal judge to try to put a stop to it. Remember, this judge can only rule for the 6 agencies it has jurisdiction over. For everyone else, they're going to have to use other channels, like the Merit Systems Protection Board, the MSPB, or the Federal Labor's Relation Authority. So this is a partial victory. Some jobs are probably going to be saved because of this. But this is only round 1. Round 2 is going to come with unions filing more lawsuits, seeing if more federal judges are willing to issue an injunction, a temporary injunction, until they can get to the bottom of it. Now, when it comes to the RIFs, that's a completely separate matter. A lot of those plans are still being formed. They're still in development, but we do have some indication on what some federal agencies are thinking. And so far, we have DOD with potentially 60,000 people being laid off, SSA around 7,000, GSA, same thing, around 7,000, USA 2,000, that's pretty much the entire agency, and HUD around 50%. They first targeted the Office of Field Policy and Management at the GS13 level and below. These numbers aren't necessarily locked in, and remember, there is a 60-day notice requirement for a RIF. Now, when it comes to the RIF, you have the retention standing. And where you want to be is you want to be a career employee, meaning that you have 3 years in the competitive service. This is one of the reasons why I stressed so heavily in the past. This is one of the reasons why I stressed heavily in the past that if you come into the government within the competitive service, you want to do those 3 years because you can be reinstated when you have those 3 years. You can look at something like CTAP, ICTAP, and there are ways where you can get back into the government and you don't have to fight like a member of the public, open to the public jobs. You're just not confined to that one path. You have other paths. If you want to know more about the upcoming RIFs, why are they happening, and the retention standings. What does it mean if you're a military veteran? What does 30% disabled mean? And all that other information. If you're interested about that, I want you to check this video out next. If you need a federal resume, check out the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.